Good morning. Praise God for another day, even though there's so much tragedy and so much to say about what's been going on with the recovery efforts in areas impacted by Hurricane Helene. I have a video of a survivor who is also a relief worker as her actual job title. She is incredible for her account of what happened in Hurricane Helene, and she's reporting from Asheville, North Carolina, and Mitchell County. So that video, she is sharing her experience of what happened and what relief is needed. And I'll put that in the link in the description box below. It's kind of comforting to hear her story. So for those of you who are asking and wondering what kind of help is needed, she'll address that later in the video. So for that reason alone, I would watch the video. It's comforting to know that she's not only alive, but she's aware of the needs of the community that are impacted by the storm. I can't help but be emotional about it. But after watching it in its length, I am happy to say that she is very smart and knows and understands the issues of what is needed to help with the immediate needs and also the long-term needs. Very, very intelligent woman. Interview was just great. Now, I would like to share some things about what happens with relief. I did share briefly about my experience of what happened in Joplin, Missouri. In 2010, I moved to Missouri for 3 years, and in 2011 of May, a Joplin tornado uh, occurred, and I was a part of a debris detail 2 months after the storm had devastated Joplin, Missouri. And what happened was we weren't allowed to go on to the area impacted, but by the time we were allowed to go on to the area, ground zero, more or less, it was 2 months after the storm. Now, I was kind of a late arrival, but FEMA had already set up the trailers and most of what you would see in I guess you could say, what I stated earlier is ground zero. When we drove through in school buses, that being us as the volunteers doing debris detail. What we were supposed to do is pick up anything that was sharp or objects like glass with special gloves. And we were wearing masks, of course, and special hazmat gear. So by the time we got off the bus, and we were only allowed to be out there for an hour because the temperature was 110 degrees. So it wasn't very long of a job on the field of where we were, the location, being as it was so hot. So I gathered as much as I could in what was left of that house and location. And I did take some things with me that I was going to make an art piece and get it back to the Joplin Museum. And because I'm an artist, and I asked special permission if I could make a wind chime and donate it to the Joplin Museum. And I got special permission to do that. The only problem is I needed special tools, and I didn't have the special tools to make the project. But I did make some projects in out of that debris. So we got back on the bus, but I have to tell you, the area that was impacted by the Joplin, Missouri tornado, it was a war zone. There was block by block by block of houses devastated. I mean, leveled. The reports were all true, of course. If you go back to the actual video and coverage of what they showed on videos of the Joplin tornado, 162 people had died in that tornado. Typically, when you hear about deaths in tornadoes, it's always devastating, but 162 people had died. I went to concerts, I went to a lot of events, fundraising events to make sure I stayed involved. So going to the debris detail event there in Joplin was not surprising for me. But what was so shocking is looking at the devastation, looking at all the spray painted houses with X's on it, meaning they were ready for demolition. And that was the majority of the houses that were still erected, meaning they had to demolish all the houses. Today, and I hope I make that trip, I really do, to go back to Joplin and see what they did to clean up and not only rebuild Joplin is my hope and prayer. Now, Joplin is about 30 minutes from Springfield, Missouri. Recovery is possible, is what I'm saying. The story of Joplin is an example that recovery is possible. I think, really, and this is just my honest opinion, if the focus is right now, just from my experience, that the fundraising is one thing, getting the resources and allocating the resources. The initial part is obviously going to be the search and recovery of the bodies, getting appropriate help from a response is the other. And that's the troubling part that we were talking about in my last night's report. Stonewalling is and politicking is not what you want to hear about when you're thinking about rescues in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina. You don't want to hear about politics at all. In fact, that's what's so upsetting about this whole thing. So when you watch this video, I just want to let you know that Joplin tornado was personally, from start to finish, an example of what is possible for these areas that are impacted. And the National Guard being there now that they're there are bringing in heavy equipment, and they're at least now getting something started. So you can reassure those who are personally impacted by the storm that help is on the way. But the thing is that watching Glenn Beck's show today, how he interviewed FEMA, it's not looking like the help is going to come quickly. A $750 check is, it's a gut, it's a punch in the stomach. I am speechless, to be honest with you, as an American and as a taxpayer, and you should be too. So many of our resources are dwindling and going to migrants who get EBT benefits and get all these resources, yet our own people are suffering with a check for $750. They don't even have their bank cards, probably. I don't know what, we don't even know what they have. Right now, they need blankets. It's going to be 40 degrees. The temperatures are dropping. And right now, it's getting desperate for these people. So, you know, we got to keep praying and be diligent. You know, right about this time, when I do these reports, I've been doing this report on the Hurricane Helene relief. You know, the real relief comes from our Father in heaven. And that's the reassurance we have, is that we know our God is not a God that'll turn his back on his people. I know that. I just have that reassurance. It's the only peace I get, that I know that God is not going to turn his back on these people. He's going to provide for them. He's going to care for them. He's going to care for them in their desperate time right now. I just know that God comes in the midst of the storm. He's the one that stopped the storm when the waves were roaring, when Peter woke him up while Jesus was sleeping during the storm, and he calmed the seas. So I don't believe in what a lot of people would say, this is God's fault. You know, that's so immature to say that this is God's fault. This is not God's fault. This is a biblical storm. Storms have existed since the beginning of time. It's just the fact that we live in a fallen world and have since the beginning of time with Adam and Eve, to, to be quite blunt. There's so many people that are naysayers and so negative and really don't really have a good handle on the truth of the matter. Earth has been going through destructive storms. This isn't the first destructive storm, and it probably most likely won't be the last, as you would know. But when we've been talking about Revelation in the stars, we have a promise and a hope of what possibly looks like an amazing display in the constellations on October 9th. And what I mean by that is, if you don't know this by now, a powerful display with the dragon, and there's more, and the woman in Revelation 12 rises up at 6:40 a.m. in Israel time, and also other constellations that are important in this whole image. If you go to www.october9th.com, and I will link that too in the description box. And the video in this shares a very important story of what's going to occur on October9th.com. And what does that really mean? It's for you to do your due diligence and study. That is approximately 3 days from now, October 9th. The day of the Lord is upon us. Does that mean that the Lord could come? It's highly possible. I have said this before. I'm not saying that Jesus could return at a day and hour that we think not, but I'm saying there's a high possibility, as the Lord has not returned on the Feast of Trumpets, but the Feast of Tabernacles and the Day of Atonement and all these days that people are looking to come and go and have. But I think we're on I hope I say this right. There's an appointment with a divine appointment that I think that Jesus' return is significantly different from just a regular feast day. There's just something to this that just makes so much sense. So go to www.october9th.com october9th.com. And if you think I want you to do your homework, don't don't rely on me. I mean, I'm just a simple person with an opinion. I don't want you to take my opinion as gospel because then I'll be doing date setting and everything else, and I'm not trying to do that. I'm simply just suggesting to do your due diligence and vet this information for yourself. I wish I had the right videography to do it, but I don't. It is a great way to say this. There's a couple things that happen on October 9th that is mentioned in Revelation 12. The woman who is clothed with the sun, with the stars above her head, 12 stars. There's a draconoid meteor shower, and there's also a dragon appearing. This also happens on October 9th. I leave you with this. This happens on October 9th. So I'll link that in the description box along with the video about the hurricane survivor. It's a video on how she is explaining what happened on the events that are taking place right now and the relief on Hurricane Helene. Thank you again for taking the time to listen to my video. Thank you for subscribing. I appreciate your time. Have a great day and great afternoon.